Chapter 1 of the book of Esther. Esther means star. In fact, we could say it's a Greek version of the name Astarte, which is the name of a false goddess, right? Of a goddess, just by having that root is false. So yeah, her Hebrew name was Hadassah. Her Hebrew name was Hadassah, but she was in, well, as we are about to read, the empire of the king Ahashverosh. So she had a Gentile name, Esther. On the other hand, we will find another person that is very important in the story called Mordechai, whose name could be translated according to the concordance as small one, little one, which is the same translation of the name Paul. So there's a connection between Paul and Mordechai. They both represent the second manifestation of Yahweh on this earth. But Mordechai, in the sense of a Gentile name, is connected to Mars, the god of war, and Marduk, right? Because of the kingdom in which they were. We find those two names in this book, which is interesting because that has to do with the fact that in the end times, they would take away the name of the Father and the Son from the congregation, and therefore the congregation itself will have a different identity connected to the false Elohim. Even the last who would come as the prodigal son, but he would come as a Gibor, as Yahweh said, he would manifest as a Gibor, as a warrior. And that's why Mordechai is connected to the god of war, as they say, right? They call him. So I would say the mighty one of war. But since to the Gentiles, that's Mars, that's the connection with Mordechai or Marduk. So we will see some of that as we go along. Esther represents the congregation of the Father, which has been worshiping falsehood throughout 2,000 years, right? The apostasy. But remember that Yahweh also promised Yitzhak and Abraham that his seed would be like the stars of heaven. So as with everything, it has a positive and a negative, right? It represents the apostasy in which the congregation would be in the end times or till the end times since Mashiach, but also represents the fact that the congregation would multiply as the stars of heaven. And as Hadassah is connected to a flower, a plant, just like Israel is represented by a plant and a flower as well, which represents honor, esteem. So, chapter 1, verse 1. And it came to be in the days of Ahashverosh, he is the Ahashverosh who reigned from India to Cush, 127 provinces. 127. If we look for this same number, you'll find out that is the age in which Sarah died. Sarah, right, the wife of Abraham, Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. So we have here that he reigned over 127 provinces, same age in which Sarah died, the wife of Abraham, the matriarch. Therefore, we have a connection between Esther and Sarah. They both represent the congregation. They have the same representation as well. Remember that heaven represents male, represents the father. Earth represents female, the mother. So Sarah, as the person from whom the congregation would come, unlike Hagar, which is the representation of those who are of the flesh and of the letter, but those who are of the spirit would come from Sarah. And therefore, well, once again, the Ruach HaKodesh within the congregation, who will multiply as the stars of heaven to reign, as the name Sarah represents the meaning of the name, nobility or princes. So just like the earth, the land, the space in which we live represents or is represented by a female, we see that connection in the fact that we came, well, Adam was made from the soil, the dust, right, of the soil. Then as a person, we came from Sarah. And now we have the same number of Sarah's death connected to Esther, but in the terms of the place where the empire ruled, right? So connected to the kingdom, to the space where they would live, which is connected to the female aspect, represented also by Sarah, who is the mother of all of us. So when it came to be in the days of Ahasuerus, he is the Ahasuerus who reigned from India to Kush, 127 provinces, 127. 127 as well because of the, well, let me just put this. If we look at the words in Hebrew that have the same numerical value, 127, but at least some of the ones that have it that seem most important. Sorrowful, for instance, could be connected because of what Israel will go through during the story, well, throughout the story of the book of Esther, even though we were protected by the Father, but there was a time in which the people thought they were going to be destroyed. The skin bottle of Yah. Remember how Mashiach spoke about new wine in new wineskins, old wine in old wineskins, which has different representations or interpretations, different teachings from that same saying. But one of them is that for the first manifestation, he had to come in a body made in that generation. Now, for the second manifestation, he must come in a new body, new wine, new wineskin. And Mordechai represents that new wineskin in which the lads would manifest. So interesting, the 127 is connected to the wineskin of Yah, or the skin bottle, which is the same. Like Yahoo. Then wheat. Remember that the chosen few in Revelation 14, when the harvest happens, the chosen few are the wheat. The many who have to go through death are the grapes, the second harvest. Day of the mighty one, the day of the mighty one. As we know, the day of Yahweh is the millennium that is coming, the seventh millennium, which starts during the last 7 years of the week of Daniel, which are represented by what we are about to read in the book of Esther. So the book of Esther and the 127 provinces over which Ahasuerus ruled represent the end times, when the day of Yahweh will begin. All right, so, and a time in which we need to be strong. And also 127, the simplest way to put it in Hebrew letters, the Kuf, the Kaf, and the Zain. Kuf, Kaf, Zain. That would be 127. I don't know why I just put it in 13, but doesn't matter. 100 represents the end times, represents a heaven. It is a needle, and that's the eye of the needle. And as we know, Yahushua compared heaven to the eye of the needle, at least the entrance. So the Kuv represents the end times. And also it is the only letter from the alphabet, this type of alphabet, that goes down from the line, the only one. So it represents the one who came down from heaven in the end times, the one who comes down from heaven in the end times, as the hand of Yahweh to bring punishment, as the throne and the crown, meaning as the king, with a sword that comes out of his mouth, the word of Yahweh. So look at how 127 with each of the letters 100, 20, and 7 gives us the idea of the one who would come down from heaven in the end times as the hand of Yahweh and the king to punish with the word of his mouth, which is the sword of Yahweh, right? So interesting. Also, we could say, because the Zayin represents a woman, the Vav, which is the one before that, is a man. The Zayin is the woman with a crown. That's why it has a curve, unlike the Vav. So in this case, we can say the one who comes down from heaven in the end times as the hand to grab the woman, right? The congregation of Yahweh for the wedding of the Lamb. So going back to the book, 127 provinces. In those days, when sovereign Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his reign, which was in the citadel of Shushan. Shushan is important. Let's check it here. So Shushan, which represents a lily, right? The flower. Remember how I mentioned that Hadassah is connected to a flower also. So we have here another representation of Israel. Shushan, like Susan. So Shushan appears, well, as a place right here. Well, in all of these verses. But anyways, like I was saying, the lily, Mashiach mentions it as the representation of the honor that the king of Israel had, Shlomo, who in all his splendor didn't look as good as the lilies of the field that Yahweh dresses. So the Shushan, the lily, represents Israel, the honor of Yahweh over the people of Israel, the esteem of the king. So you see how it's the same word right here. In this case, Shushan, once again, lily is the same word, but the other one appeared as the name of a place. In this case, as you can see, it's the same word, but the concordance separated it to when it appears as a flower. You see, lily, lily, and the other one, it had Shushan, 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 because it was referring to the place called Shushan. But in this case, it's referring to the flower. And you can see all the instances where it appears. And if we were to go through them, for instance, the ones that appear in Song of Songs are very important and show that Israel is represented by the lily. I am the rose of Sharon and the lily of the valleys, right? Israel, the congregation, the Ruach HaKodesh. So that's Shushan. And Shushan comes from Shush. Well, in this case, they changed the pronunciation of the Shin, so they put Sus. But as you see, is Shin, Vav Shin, which is the root of Shushan, so it makes sense to have Shush. And I just say it like that because you know how Sus is horse and it's connected to Jesus. But anyways, this Shush is to rejoice, to exalt, to display joy. So Shushan is a flower that represents joy. The lily is a flower that represents joy, to rejoice. Yahweh tells us to rejoice. Always to rejoice. In fact, we read it not long ago, one of the previous studies. And in fact, as you guys may know already, this is the upper part of our logo as the congregation, right? The menorah is made up with these 3 letters held by 2 tzaddikim, represented by the letter tzaddik mirrored. So yeah, so that's why we rejoice. Well, mainly in the Spanish studies, right? I do joke around a little bit more than this one because I'm alone and all of that. So well, but those who know me know how we do, right? So also another interesting thing about this and the connection with Shushan and Mashiach is that if we take the word Mashiach, right? We have Mashiach, and we take this letter and put it first, and then this letter put it second, and then this letter put it third, and then this letter last. We have that you will be happy. You will rejoice. In fact, Yizmach. It will be, he will rejoice. So he who believes in Mashiach, he will rejoice, or she will rejoice. But although this is a conjugated male third person, so he will rejoice. So he who accepts Mashiach is part of the congregation. Therefore, he is Shushan. And if he is Shushan, he rejoices. For that is the meaning of the word, right? Or the root. So hopefully that's clear. Now let me go back to the book. In those days when sovereign Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his reign, which was in the citadel of Shushan, that in the 3rd year of his reign he made a feast for all his officials and servants. In the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast for all his officials and servants. So 3 years, like the beginning, as we know, the 2 witnesses will preach for 3.5 years. And that is the first half of the last 7. Obviously, the number 3 connects with movement, with balance, with matter, and obviously with the 3 days of Mashiach in the tomb, dying to destroy the authority of the 3 Satans, Samael, Halel, and Azazel. So in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast for all his officials and servants. The power of Persia and Media, the media nowadays has a lot of power, but not this one, not the same one. The power of Persia and the Media, or Media, the nobles and the princes of the provinces were before him. Remember that these 2 names represent or mean splendor, splendid, and middle land. Well, the middle. So land, because of the fact that it was a place, but the word in itself means middle. The splendid ones and those in the middle, that's what those 2 names mean. So they represent the few and the many. The few chosen are splendid. They will be kings and priests. The many are right in the middle, because they are in the middle of the few and the nations, right? The 3 groups that will enter the kingdom of Yahweh, or at least eternity, will be the few, the many, and the nations. So the many are right in the middle, Media. So the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and the princes of the provinces were before him. When he showed the riches of his esteemed reign and the splendor of his excellent greatness for many days, 180 days. Imagine, I cannot really, to make a party that lasts 180 days, half a year party. And their parties were crazy, because they would have contests to see who would drink more alcohol, and people would actually die of how much alcohol they would drink in a day, or how many days they would have the contest for, because they had 180 days to drink. The Persians would go crazy with the drinking, obviously something that is not good. So it's interesting that 180 days, which is half a year, right? So it says on the 3rd year, for 180 days, they party. So that takes us to the 3 years and a half, right? So the 3 years and a half of the beginning of the last 7, the testimony of the 2 witnesses. For instance, my point is that is making reference to 3 years and a half, which obviously are very connected to the 1,260 days of the 2 witnesses, or the 42 months. 180. Also 180. Well, let's do it here again. B'nai Hanavim, the sons of the prophets, 180. Interestingly enough, remember that the 144,000 who could be seen as the sons of the prophets, meaning the sons of the two witnesses, the 144,000 will be sealed on their foreheads at the very end of the 3 years and a half. Because remember that on Revelation 7, the Malach of Yahweh, he says to the four Malachim that are on the four corners of the earth, not to go and destroy the earth, well, the land, the sea, or the trees, until the 144,000 are sealed on their foreheads. So we see that all, even after the sixth seal, which happens on the sixth chapter, even after the sixth seal, the 144,000 haven't been sealed. So then comes the seventh chapter where the Malach says that, and then the eighth chapter where the seventh seal is open, and then the Malachim start to sound the trumpets. So the seventh seal is open on the eighth chapter of Revelation, and therefore that is when the chosen few begin to be sealed on their foreheads, because the names of the chosen few are written on the book of life, which is sealed with 7 seals. So the names cannot be seen until the 7 seals are open. So once they are open, then they begin to be sealed, right? Therefore, it's interesting that we just saw that he was on the 3rd year, and then for 180 days he made a party, a feast. Those 180 days, like the last half a year of the two witnesses, in which the chosen few would be sealed. That's why 180, same numerical value as the sons of the prophets. Then we have to move away, to transfix. And as we know, the chosen few will be transformed, will go away from this reality. The sons of the prophets. This is the one I was looking for. In the face of before. In fact, not this one exactly. I wonder why they don't have the one. It's pretty much the same, but just one letter change. I'll just show you in a little bit. But in the presence of, in the face of. So after the 180 days, after being in the presence of the two witnesses, the manifestation of the last when they are being sealed, after the 180 days, last 180 days, the last half a year, the chosen few, the sons of the prophets, will be, so I'll put it like this: the sons of the prophets, the chosen few, will move away from this reality and be transfixed to go above, or they will be transformed from above to go to the presence of Yahweh. And that is the assembly, the congregation. So look how just the 180 gives us a message. And you know how we say that somebody made a turn, 180 turn, right? Or which it will be what will happen with the chosen few when they go from this reality to the other, from this body to the next. And they will be taken to a place, a dwelling place, after they are plucked from the earth during the harvest by the two fountains, the two witnesses. We could even add this one, having water springs, right? For they will be springs of water of life once they are completely connected to Mashiach, the chosen few. And they will be hidden. They will be covered from what is coming to the world during the last 7 plagues. For the world will be oppressed and they will suffer. But because of their labor, that of the chosen few, because of their work, they will be taken to the clouds and be covered. Isn't that amazing? So we see how the 180 shows the harvest of the chosen few being taken to the clouds and everything else that I just said. So the other one that I was thinking, which I do believe is beautiful. Panim al panim means face to face, and is what appears in the scriptures when Moshe would speak to Elohim face to face, or as Paul says, that we will see face to face in the new reality. Panim al panim, as two faces, that of the first and that of the last, or that of the congregation and that of Mashiach, of course. El is not only two, but also mighty one, as we know, right? So it is the mighty one manifested as the first and the last. The mighty one who said, I am who I am. I will be whom I will be. 180, that makes 360, which is the complete circle. So the first 180 represents the first manifestation, the second 180 represents the second manifestation to complete the circle, to complete the prophecy or the plan of the mighty one. But my point here with the fact that they made a feast for 180 will be like the chosen few making a feast, because they will see the face of Yahweh in 180 after 3 years of the two witnesses being, given their testimony. So, and when these days were completed, the sovereign made a feast lasting 7 days. So they didn't have enough, right? 180 days weren't enough. He said, no, we should do it for 7 more days. Why not, right? So that is amazing. I cannot imagine. I repeat, even a 7-day party, that seems crazy, but they made it for 187 days. And see how the scripture separates these other 7, which obviously connects this story to the last 7 days or the last 7 years, the last week of Daniel. And also to the fact that after the chosen few are sealed, the 2 witnesses will be killed. And then comes the Feast of Sukkot, which is the second Exodus, when the harvest will happen at the very end of it. And this Feast of Sukkot lasts 7 days. So it is pretty much saying the 180 days takes us to the Feast of Sukkot, when the chosen few will go through the second Exodus. And when these days were completed, the sovereign made a feast lasting 7 days for all people who were present in the citadel of Shushan, from great to small, in the country yard of the garden of the sovereign's palace. White and blue tapestries were fastened with cords of fine linen and purple on silver rods and marble columns. The couches were of gold and silver on mosaic pavement. So white and blue, that obviously connects to heaven. It's a representation of the fact that the chosen few will be taken to heaven after those 7 days, to the clouds, and to become royalty and set apart. The white represents set apartness, or purity, being without sin, as the bodies of the chosen few and the many. And the blue, royalty, and heaven, of course, the kingdom of heaven. Tapestries were fastened with cords of fine linen. Cords represent judgment. Fine linen is the clothing of the chosen few in the wedding of the Lamb. And purple represents royalty as well, because it is the mix of blue, heavenly, and red, earthly. Water and fire united. We get the heavens, Shamaim, right? Esh and Maim. Fire and water. On silver rods and marble columns. Once again, the marble connected to the purity. The columns to those who will hold the kingdom of Yahweh together. Silver, when we have it next to gold, represents the many. As we have it here, the couches were of gold and silver, the few and the many, on the mosaic pavement of porphyry. Hopefully I'm saying it correctly, or at least close. Marble, mother of pearl and black marble. And the point is that it was, there was a lot of luxury in that place, right? It was an amazing um, kingdom, and he was trying to display that through this feast that he made for 187 days. And they served drinks in golden vessels, and the vessels being different from one another, with much royal wine, according to the hand of the sovereign. And drinking was according to the law. No one was compelled, for so the sovereign had ordered all the officers of his house that they should do according to each one's pleasure. So this is interesting. This is being said to show that this king was wiser than others of the same kingdom, because he gave free will. He wouldn't force people to drink, because that would cause issues in the past. Like I said, these parties were crazy in this kingdom. So, and drinking was according to the law. No one was compelled, for so the sovereign had ordered all the officers of his house that they should do according to each one's pleasure. And like I said, this is important because, I mean, it seems kind of pointless to point it out, right? Because one would say, of course, everybody should drink according to their pleasure. But if it's saying this, is because it wasn't always like that. So then he says, Sovereigness Vashti also made a feast for the women in the royal palace, which sovereign Ahasuerus owned. So you see how he puts it. It was the palace of Ahasuerus. She was in his house, right? And I say that because of the way it's written and because of what's coming. On the seventh day, the very end of the feast, when the heart of the sovereign was glad with wine, pretty drunk, he ordered Mehuman, Bista, Harbona, Bikta, and Avachta, Setar, and Karkas, the 7 eunuchs who were in attendance in the presence of sovereign Ahasuerus. So 7, like the 7 malachim before the Father. Now, I said the thing about being a bit drunk regarding Ahasuerus because of the feast and all of that, and because he was a Gentile. But in the sense, the spiritual sense of this book and this story, Ahasuerus represents Yahushua. Esther represents the congregation. Mordechai represents the second manifestation. Vashti represents the whore of Babylon. All right, so this time is pretty much when we come to the end and the king is calling for his bride to appear before him. But she acts like the whore of Babylon. So she needs to be punished and replaced. And that is pretty much the story that we will have here instead in the book of Esther. So on the 7th day, well, I already said that, to bring sovereignness Vashti before the sovereign. So we come to the very end, and Yahweh is calling for the congregation to come before him with her royal crown, in order to show her loveliness to the people and the officials, for she was lovely to look upon. So Mashiach, being ready and happy, calls for his bride because she looks good, right? Obviously, in the sense of the story right here, the physical sense, he wanted to show her off, right? Before everybody. He wanted to say, this is my girl. So in a way, that was something that she didn't like about this. But she was who she was because of him. So that is the main issue, that she's not respecting her king. So, but sovereigness Vashti refused to come at the sovereign's command brought by his eunuchs. So she refused, which is like the whore of Babylon, the false congregation. When the malachim, the 7 malachim that stand before Yahweh and the Lamb, Yahushua, as Ahasuerus represents here, they come for the congregation, but the congregation doesn't want to go to the Father because she's pleased with this reality. And she's in the false doctrine. Just like when the 2 witnesses appear before the many, and they don't want to hear the call. They reject the doctrine. They refuse to go before the king. This 7 also represent the 7 malachim. Well, I already said that, but the 7 congregations, the 7 malachim over the 7 congregations. So the 7 malachim over the 7 congregations go to gather the bride, which would be the mix of all the 7 congregations, like the menorah that has 7 lights, like the 7 days that they spent at the very end of the feast, which connects with Sukkot. So then it says, and the sovereign was very wroth, and his rage burned within him. Like in the end, Yahweh brings his wrath, right? At the end, Yahweh will come to bring his wrath, for he is very wroth. And his rage is burning, like a consuming fire. That's why the last comes as the consuming fire. Also, look how it says, she refused to come at the sovereign's command. So it shows how she breaks the commandments of the sovereign. And that is the problem. That's why he's wroth. And that's why the plagues are coming for the world. So the sovereign said to the wise men who understood the times. Look at that. The wise men who understood the times. This is interesting because of what he's about to ask. And I'll explain after. So the sovereign said to the wise men who understood the times, for in this way the sovereign's matter came before all who knew law and right ruling, and who were close to him. Karshena, Shetar, Admata, Tarshish, Meres, Marsena, Memukam, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, who saw the sovereign's face, and who sat first in the reign. Who sat first in the reign. Once again, 7 princes, like the 7 malachim, who stand before the mighty one of all the earth, and who are above those who are splendid, the few, and those who are in the middle, the many. So it says, according to law, what is to be done to sovereigness Vashti? So he's asking, what should we do to her for disobeying the command? He's asking it to those who were wise and understood the times. Not just wise, but understood the times. How is that relevant to the fact that she disobeyed? But it is relevant to the interpretation of the book, that they were the ones who knew the end times, when the end times would manifest, when the congregation should appear before the king. And the sovereign said to the wise men who understood the times, for in this way the sovereign's matter came before all who knew law and right ruling, and who were close to him. Karshena, Shetar, Admata, Tarshish, Meres, Marshena, Memukam. The 7 princes of Persia and Media, who saw the sovereign's face, who sat first in the reign. According to law, what is to be done to sovereigness Vashti, because she did not perform the command of sovereign Ahasuerus to the eunuchs? And Memukam answered before the sovereign and the princes. It is said in Judaism, at least, that Memukam was another name for Daniel. Remember that Daniel was given a name when he was in the Babylonian kingdom, different name. Then the Persian kingdom entered and took over, and they took Daniel as one of the wise men, just like Babylon had done. So Daniel remained in power in a way with the king now in Persia. That is a fact. But in Judaism, it is said that Memukam was the name given to him in Persia, and he would be the one saying this. And it is said also that he was saying this because this, especially this, affected him, because he had a wife of that kingdom who didn't speak this Hebrew. So she would disobey Daniel and not want to learn Hebrew to communicate with him. So he took this as the moment to make a law in the kingdom which would benefit not only the king, but also him and his relationship with his wife. So it says, and Memucham answered before the sovereign and princes. Sovereigness Vashti has misbehaved, not only toward the sovereign, but also toward all the princes and all the people who were, and all the people who are in all the provinces of sovereign Ahasuerus, right? She did not only disobey and disrespect the king, but also everybody, because she was supposed to come out to see everybody. Well, the people of those provinces. The matter of sovereignness shall go forth to all women to make their husbands despised in their eyes. When they say sovereign Ahasuerus commanded sovereignness Vashti to be brought in before him, but she did not come. So he's saying, if all the women of the kingdom realize what she did, they will start disobeying their husbands. They will start disobeying their heads, right? So that would bring a lot of trouble to the whole kingdom, in fact, because obviously shalom in the house is very important. In fact, Yahweh loves peace in the homes. So for the matter of the sovereignness shall go forth to all women to make their husbands despised in their eyes. When they say sovereign Ahasuerus commanded sovereigness Vashti to be brought in before him, but she did not come. So he's saying, because of the great whore of Babylon and the way she has acted, now all the little congregations who are also women will start to disobey. And that's what happened during the apostasy, the rebellion of the congregations, the different denominations of the world. Also, it's interesting to see this because we see through scriptures, through the Ruach HaKodesh, how one in power, male or female, can influence so much those below them, right? Those who follow them. Because here Memukam is saying the husbands will be despised in the eyes of their brides or of their wives because of what Vashti has done. So that example would influence the rest of the women of the kingdom to act likewise. And I say that because nowadays, or even for decades, we have been seeing the influence of those in power, politician leaders or singers, actresses, or whatever, making division in homes, right? Putting male against female, female against male, wife against husband, husband against wife. So then it says, in this day the princesses of Persia and Media shall say to all the sovereign's officials that they have heard of the matter of the sovereignness with plenty of scorn and wrath. If it pleases the sovereign, let a royal decree go out from him, and let it be recorded in the laws of the Persians and the Medes, so that it does not pass away. It is interesting also that this is happening at the very beginning, so that we also understand how laws worked in that kingdom. Because in this particular kingdom, when the king would sign a law, then there was no way to change that law. There was no way. That was a law forever, and there was no way to break it. And that is the same with the law of Yahweh. It is what it is. The law of Yahweh is represented here by the law of the Persians and the Medes. What Yahweh says fulfills, and that's it. His words do not come back to him empty. So the law of the Persians and the Medes represents the law of Yahweh, so that it does not pass away, as Mashiach said, that not one letter, not one yud would pass away. It says, if it pleases the sovereign, let a royal decree go out from him, and let it be recorded in the laws of the Persians and the Medes, so that it does not pass away, that Vashti shall come no more before sovereign Ahasuerus. So she was punished with not being able to come ever again before the king. And that is what is going to happen with the many, even. Because remember, Yahushua said, the world will not see me anymore, but you will see me, talking to the disciples who represent the chosen few from the 12 tribes, just like there were 12 disciples. So the punishment of those in the apostasy and who do not want to leave the apostasy will be not to be able to see Mashiach ever. Within the apostasy, there will be some who will be lost completely, while others will be justified. It depends on, well, pretty much the judgment Yahweh will do according to their faith and works. So, and let the sovereign give her royal position to another who is better than she. So the many, as the great whore, will not be able to come before Mashiach's presence. And let the sovereign, Yahweh Yahushua, give her royal position to another, meaning the chosen few, the congregation of the chosen few, who is better than she. So this is a very important verse that shows what the book represents and what Yahweh would do by changing those of the flesh for those of the spirit, the many for the few, the many who would be first because they were in the apostasy, but at the end times Yahweh brings the new the revelation, the good news, the new covenant, which is confirmed by the last, and the chosen few accepted. So they are this woman who is better than the previous one. And the sovereign's decree which he makes shall be proclaimed through all his rule, great as it is. And all the wives give esteem to their husbands, both great and small. So he was hoping that this would help not only the kingdom, but himself, because of the issues he was having with his wife. That is what they say in Judaism. And it's interesting. That's why I mention it, because it is a possibility. And the word was good in the eyes of the sovereign and the princes, and the sovereign did according to the word of Memukam. And Memukam, dignified, right? Like, for instance, if it was Daniel, he was quite dignified. That's the meaning of the name. So then it says, so he sent letters to all the sovereign's provinces, to each province in its own writing, just like the two witnesses will bring the good news about the chosen few who now are being called. For many are called, but the few are chosen to come before the sovereign to see which one will be chosen. Because many women would come to the king and he would choose which one. So it is like the 10 virgins. And he chose 5, right? In this case, from all the ones that would come from all the provinces, he would choose 1. And 127 provinces, right? As we saw in the beginning. As we know, 120 represents the end times, because Yahweh gave Noah 120 years to prepare for the flood, and that represented 120 jubilees from Adam till the end times, from Adam till the son of Adam, the Ben Adam. There would be 7,000, 6,000 years till the last. 6,000 years are 120 jubilees. For one jubilee is 50 years. So 120 times 50, we have 6,000. So 120 represents the last jubilee, coming to the end times. And the 7 represents the week of Daniel, the last 7 years that we see in Daniel and the book of Revelation. So 127 represents the very end of times. And now he's sending this letter to all the provinces in everyone's language, just like the two witnesses would appear and give the good news as letters to all the world, where the few chosen are dispersed. And through nowadays technology, the doctrine, the teaching will be given to every person according to their own language, so that everybody is able to come to the Father. So that's how the chapter ends.